Hello, 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 beautiful soul family. Rebecca here, your vibe mentor. And this continues to be the place for conscious, purpose driven entrepreneurs who are looking to remove the blocks that hold you back from your purpose so that you can manifest abundance through it. Welcome. Today, we have a beautiful guest, Becca Ray Eagle, who I'm so excited. Thank you for being here with us, Becca. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's an
Yeah.
honor.
Yes, welcome, welcome. So Becca is a writing doula and serves in journaling in helping those who are looking to journal and publish their own manuscripts. She's an author of multiple books now. One, The Embodying Joy, a heart journal, which is out already, and also Ignite Your Faith coming in June, as well as the course Journaling CPR, Faith in Journaling. Also, I think that's coming in July. Do you have more details around that, Becca, you would like to share?
Sure, July is going to be a very special month. July 17th, I'm going to be launching the Journal CPR course, and the audiobook version of Embodying Joy is also launching the same day. I just feel like it's a special time with the new moon to release things that have been helping my heart for so much time.
Beautiful. And I think you mentioned maybe a podcast as well. Is that right?
Yes, I am on season 3 of my Joyful Journaling podcast, and season 4 is actually, this is the first time I've told people, going to be the audio version of my book as my gift to the world.
Perfect. Beautiful. You are very generous in all that you give. So I'm excited to see what you release.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So tell us a little bit more about how did you become a writing doula and get into journaling and all the things that you're doing now?
I served as a teacher, so I was a teacher in the public education system, both at the middle school and high school level, and then at the community college level from the years 2000 to the year 2022. And I've been helping people birth their words for, I guess, the goals of the public school system for all those years. But in my heart, my favorite part of teaching was helping people birth themselves onto the page. So, all throughout that time, I also helped people write resumes, cover letters, proofread things, and helped a couple authors get actionable manuscripts to take to publishing houses or self publish. When I found myself not teaching last year, I still had the desire to help people with that process, birthing themselves through their words and acknowledging their truth on the page. And that's how I feel I am serving as a writing doula, birthing words into life that they may not have known or had the courage to put out into the world.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So you mentioned when we were talking earlier that journaling saved your life. I'd love to hear more about how did that support you and what was that experience like?
When I was 8.5 years old, we lived at my grandparents' home. And one summer day, I unfortunately experienced some sexual trauma at the hands of a neighbor. And I couldn't tell anybody because it would have ruined my family, ruined our street dynamics and the social niche of that area. It would have destroyed so many things in place, and I had to keep it secret. And the only safe place to talk about it was with my journal. So I started putting my heart on the page as a survival tool for a place to put that information and that experience that was so scary that I didn't even know how to talk about it until my late 30s otherwise.
Beautiful.
And in essence, because I kept up with the practice of journaling, I learned that the journal is a safe page to meet with your heart, to meet with source,
Yeah.
and to filter through anything that you need to bring to the table and process for survival, but not only surviving, but thriving.
Exactly. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that with us, because so often sexual trauma is one of the traumas that is most hidden, right? That creates the most shame and fear of rejection and all of the other harshness that can come with asking for help around that. And so I really commend you for being able to speak that truth and show up for others who struggle with that. And I know you mentioned sort of meeting source and finding love in the journal. And how did that show up for you?
Because I started at such a young age, journaling feels like an extension of my breathing at this point. But practicing receiving love from source does take practice as well. And we want to find that love so many times from without ourselves. We go to a building or go to a practice or whatever it may be. But when you journal, you actually feel and hear the voice of your heart onto the page. And you don't need to go anywhere to do that. It's accessible at any moment that you practice and learn how to open yourself up to it. And call it intuition, call it divine downloads, call it love coming through your pen. As you practice and learn how to trust the process, you have a tool that you can use for life, and it barely costs a thing. It costs you the time that you give to yourself in which you receive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's such a beautiful connection to the somatic healing work that I do too, and that we forget. We often detach from our body. In psychology, it's disassociation, right? It's essentially numbing out or avoiding or distracting from our body. And we forget that the breath of life courses through us. The divine lives in our body, right? God is in our body. And when we are so out there, right, because the body seemed to be the source of our pain, the body was the source of emotion. And we subconsciously identified that emotion, that pain, as the enemy. And so we tend to kind of go out or up, right? And journaling, it sounds like, is kind of bringing you back to your heart, if I'm hearing you correctly.
It really is. I mean, I grew up in the Christian faith, but one of the truths that, I keep in my heart is, above all else, guard your heart. But what is guarding? Guarding is keeping it safe.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always safe within the pages of your journal.
Mm-hmm.
From it is the wellspring of life. You
Yeah.
know, when you learn to tap into your heart, you can also tap into that somatic healing that you were talking about. Um, there's a website and some research that I have done for my journal CPR course that talks about all those connections, receiving that somatic healing in your heart space, and it is a divine gift. So, according to somaticwriting.com and the research that's done there, somatic writing is a radically holistic, body centered writing and speaking process that will gently and powerfully support you in breaking free from fear, shame, and unprocessed grief, as well as from limiting beliefs that have held you back in your writing and in your life. End quote. To me, that's about the biggest gift that God can give me
Yeah.
is embracing those tools with my journal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you put it that way, that it allows us, like you said, to kind of come back to our heart or guard our heart, right? And another very common response in trauma is again that disassociation, the disconnection, the avoidance, the detaching from ourselves. But what we don't realize, and of course we should never beat on ourselves for that, it is a necessary survival mechanism in that moment. We absolutely have to have coping mechanisms to deal with what we're dealing with. But the problem comes in when we perpetuate that. And what we don't realize is subconsciously we're abandoning ourselves, right? And when we are
Exactly.
out there and we have foregone everything in here, we literally have abandoned ourselves, and inadvertently we are perpetuating the very things that initially caused us pain, right? And so it's amazing that in the work I do, that the compassionate witness is one of the most powerful healing components. And in journaling, we are the compassionate witness to ourselves, right?
That's exactly right. When I was writing the memoir that I published this year, when I was crafting it last year, the original title was Beckoning Joy. And I realized through witnessing my own process of taking stories and putting them into journal format and my memoir format, that I was no longer beckoning joy. I was in a process of learning how to embody joy. And it's a process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because I wrote that book doesn't mean that we're not learning new things all the time. And that's a gift too.
Yeah.
So that embodiment of learning how to step into fully in safety in your own body and truly experience that joy, one lesson at a time, one page at a time, one experience at a time, one download at a time. I mean, that's the joy of the gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so many people like us who have experienced complex trauma, who are aware of the spiritual realm, the energetic realm, we often feel like outsiders. We feel like we don't belong. We had experiences in childhood or our formative years of any at any age. We felt different. And there was a knowing, and actually a subconscious knowing on the part of the others around us as well, that we were different, and that partially caused some of the rejection that we felt. But it is because we are here to be different, and we are here to be catalysts for change. We're here to bridge the gap from the old to the new world. You cannot be a leader and be the same as everyone else. It's just not part of the package. And so oftentimes I find people, again, disconnecting, detaching, wanting to go up and out of the body. People will say, I don't belong here, or I want to go home. And what's very fascinating is after we heal, we start to realize that home, that's phrase, home is where the heart is, takes on new meaning. It's not just the physical house where the people you love are, but it literally is in your body where your heart is. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel like journaling can kind of help you reclaim your home or come home to yourself?
It has, because the minute those horrific things happened when I was little, I literally had a barrier between the people that I loved the most. I would have never betrayed my grandfather by telling him one of his friends did that horrible thing to me. I would have never, all the things that I called home and safe. When I walked back from that scene in that situation, my home changed. I no longer felt at home in my home. I no longer felt at home in the world. I had to work through all that. And just like any sort of trauma, this was the only home that I could trust. And I didn't have to put up a facade, and I could call my best friend.
Mm.
It's silly to call a notebook your best friend, but when it opens a sense of safety and home within you, my gosh, my golly, yeah, that's going to be my best friend in my home for 40 years until, I've only really dug into the healing process for the last few years. But thank goodness I had a home to go to where I could meet what I call God within my heart, which is our home no matter where we are in the universe.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful practice and process.
Yeah. Journaling is such an important part to healing trauma. And in my work with my clients, that's what I see, right? When they heal, they finally, more often than not, they have all said, I finally feel like I'm home, right? Safe in our own skin. So tell us, what are some of the benefits? Why should people journal?
So there's a lot of research, and I'm going to read directly so that I don't botch it up because I did a lot of research. Science is really important to me, and it's really important to dig into so that everybody's on the same page, some of the benefits of journaling. So this particular research is from 2018 with the Department of Biobehavioral Health at Pennsylvania State University. And they concluded that adults with elevated anxiety found that online journaling, which is a little bit different, but for 12 weeks, about 3 months, significantly reduced their mental distress. Long-term journaling also associated with greater resilience.
Beautiful.
That's what I based my whole book on, was that science. The other benefit that I based scientifically was from 2020, the University at Auckland and a UC Berkeley reporter explained, quote, the expressions of emotions concerning stressful or traumatic events can produce measurable effects on human immune responses, end quote.
Yeah.
It helps your body, it helps your mind, and it helps your spirit open. It's a body. That's why I called my book a memoir with journal space for body, mind, and spirit health. It's all connected. And it starts with that, bringing your emotions to the page in a somatic experience that you can feel at home and find your way back to your heart.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. And I know in your course coming up, you also mentioned sort of the who, what, you had 5 or 6 different reasons why. Do you want to tell us more about those?
Sure. So my course is called Journal CPR because it's reviving your heart. Because within your heart, CPR is actually certain promises realized. And that's what the overarching of the course is. And then I teach you AED, which is, another acronym we associate with the heart. But I teach you activated, energetic responses. So your response from your heart in your journal can help you. But there's 5 different things that I teach that are very simple. I don't know, high fives and things with 5s just resonate with me. 5 is a special number. But whenever I taught writing, to my students, always start with those things. Who are you writing for? What are you writing about? When are you doing it? Why are you doing it? And how? Who, what, why, when, where, and how. And the 6 is opening your palm and receiving all the beautiful things through your journal. So I go through that process over the course of 5 weeks. And then the 6th week, because it's a 40-day journaling course, the 6 weeks we receive and celebrate the different things that we've learned so that you can continue the process and make it a practice that's lifelong. Don't just keep all this goodness for 40 days. Why wouldn't you want this practice as a part of your everyday life? This is all inspired by Julia Cameron's Write for Life. I did her course recently and I realized writing for life is great if you want to be a writer, but I've been journaling for life, my actual heart space life, since I was 8 years old. And I can't wait to teach people about these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I've been writing my whole life as well. That was my outlet as well. There's only so much that the body can hold, right? The body keeps the score. And there is something called the Diathesis Model in psychology. It's very simple. It's just a cup filled up with water. And when we have filled up too much, what do? We overflow. And I found that the journal was the safe place to overflow, right? And there were really hard times in my childhood, and that was the outlet. Probably would have led to other psychological breakdowns had I not had that outlet. And so oftentimes in my work, I'll suggest journaling to people as part of the healing process. But oftentimes I'll hear, I don't know how to do that, or I can't do it. Or again, it goes back to that disconnection from the body, right? We live up here oftentimes when there is too much down here to be comfortable in our own body. And so I would ask you, what are some of the common blocks that you have seen in the people that you've worked with? What are they struggling with? What is keeping them from journaling, and how can they overcome that?
The first one is how journaling as a practice has been introduced. And I want to say not exclusively, but thank you, American public school system. We had really good intentions because of the research, but teachers are trained up to use this as a processing tool for cerebral and academic information. And then you often have to produce something from its pages. The pressure of that production and the perfectionism that goes into that practice becomes a whole nother trauma for kids who may not find writing their number one way to express themselves. So the way that we have used journaling will stop a lot of people in their tracks. They'll be like, oh, journaling. I remember that from school. No, thank you. So, I mean, teachers have good heartfelt intentions, but, you know, having your journal graded for grammar, spelling, mechanics, the quality of thought, my goodness, that's supposed to be a safe space that turns into things. It's not supposed to be the product itself. These poor kids. And so that's, you know, a lot of where that comes in. The second one is it's intimidating to look at anything blank. To have a blank canvas, a lot of times for people who are afraid to put themselves out there or have that perfectionism built into them, they want it to be perfect when they pick up the pen and put it to that blank canvas. It's perfect, whatever comes out on the canvas. Nobody's judging whatever comes out. So people are stopped in their tracks just simply by looking at a blank page. And that's their response to it. So they don't know how to get started. And as a writing doula, holding people's hands for a little bit and giving them some tools helps to give them a safe space and a safe practice to try to see that blank page isn't so scary.
Yeah.
It's actually going to help you with anything else that you want to bring to the table. So those are two things that really knock people in their tracks or off their tracks. And then the third is people think there's a way to do it. How am I supposed to do it? Well, it's a practice, just like anything. You know, there's a way to shoot 3 free throws, but, you know, for Michael Jordan, it comes naturally. You know, you have to practice, and people give up so often because they don't practice it long enough. If you practice, you get better at it. And so many people just plain old give up before they even try. So those are some of the big common things I've seen.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned too where they journal. I know for me, I love buying a new journal.
Yeah. A lot of people think that you have to have a certain vessel for journaling. So especially in the American school system, marble $1 to $2 notebooks have become kind of a trauma trigger for certain kids who don't like to write. It's writing time. Uh-oh. Well, don't make that your journal. Make it a special gift to yourself. When you meet a new person and you stare at that blank page and they remind you of somebody else in a bad way, you don't want to spend time with them. You want to go on a hunt for your journal and make it special. The thing is, that journal may be at the Dollar Tree or Dollar General, or it may be in a fancy bookstore for $50, you know, leather bound, whatever speaks to your vibration.
Yeah.
I mean, in my house right now, I have 2 crates full of journals, and they're all different, and they're whatever served me at the time. And then just to give you a wild example, at one point this winter, I was like, oh, shoot, I don't have a journal and I'm very busy right now. I'm going to have to go shopping for a journal. And then a friend sent me 3 of them. You know, I mean, right now it's really funny, but you know, I'm doing a Hello Kitty journal. You know, it's speaking to my inner child. She knew just what I needed, and I trusted the universe that when the journal I need, sometimes it shows up. And some of the gifts I've received as journals have been the most special ones.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share mine too. I love just buying. I have journals specific to things, right? So journaling for myself personally, journaling for learning, journaling for clients, right? So just the one that I have available, right? It says there's always something to be grateful for, right? And the
Yes.
moment you buy something like that, it again warms my heart, right? I get excited. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to spend time with it. And there's a process of learning what you like too. Like I like the spiral because I want to be able to flip the page. And when, when the book is too thick and my hand doesn't rest quite right, I can move things around. And some people might like, something that's more of a leather bound, right? Maybe you like that feeling of like it's not going to go anywhere, or maybe you like the ribbons that bookmark your page, or whatever it is. You're engaging with this thing, right? You have a relationship with it, and so
Yes.
find something that speaks to you, because it absolutely will get you excited about spending time with it, instead of that feeling of like, oh no, the marble composition notebook, it triggers a memory probably, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
And yeah, I'm very specific about what I like. And that's why I say practice, because if your first journaling experience is in one of those notebooks, it's really hard to even turn the page, or you use a pen that bleeds through and gets onto the other. You just
yeah,
want to throw the whole
yeah,
thing out, you know?
yeah. The pen matters too. I will say you've got to have the favorite pen as well. How it flows, how it writes, it all matters. And for some, I will recognize, my son has ADHD, and writing is never going to be his thing.
No,
Never, ever, ever, ever. So if it's
no.
not your thing, again, don't beat on yourself for that, right?
Right.
But find the other method of expression that can work for you. Maybe it's voice notes. There's other ways
Yes.
to express in that safe place. And since we're sticking to the theme of fives, it just happens to be 5-5, the eclipse today. So I'll add a fifth one. And really the fifth one, of as far as blocks that block people, is just building on what you've shared so far. And you remind me of all of the trauma responses that are tangled up in the things that keep us from showing up in this way.
Yes.
And it's that performance or perfectionism or keeping things under control, and all three of those are very, very prominent common trauma responses, right? That if I'm, who am I supposed to be? How am I supposed to show up? How am I supposed to do this thing? Right? It's the perfectionism and the belief that
Exactly.
everything has to be contained and controlled for you to feel safe enough that you haven't done something wrong, where the brain believes you're going to bring pain upon yourself. And so
Right.
opening up the limitations, that you cannot do it wrong. Michael Jordan, he probably was gifted with that gift. Yes, if he's playing a game, there's a strategy to it, but this is different. You're not on the court with a whole bunch of people watching you. It's you and the book, and that's it. And it's the safety that is so critically important, that can allow the nervous system to relax, that
Yes.
allows the heart to open up, and allows that to flow from you, right? So
And
putting that down.
keep engaging with that experience. I mean, just because one journal session went one way doesn't mean that it's not going to go differently at another time, you know. And for people who find that the physical act of journaling may be difficult, I'm glad you brought up voice notes, because you can have a painting journal, you can have art incorporated into your journal, you can have a voice note file of journals with the vibration of your voice. Just because I like pen to page, you know, doesn't mean that everybody does, but people do have ways of expressing themselves and bringing in other mediums of creativity,
Yeah.
which is so beautiful to the journaling process. So having a baseline and a place to start, though, is always important, because you can always tweak it to what meets your needs. That's why I find so many people give up on meditation, because they try it one way and
Yeah.
that doesn't work for them. Well, journaling's the same way. At least give it a try and practice.
Yeah. And I love those questions that you offered to help kind of get you started. Right. And if you were to do some sort of artistic journaling, more along the lines of painting or something of that nature, you can still start with the word, right?
Yes.
How am I feeling? Right? Am I
Yes.
feeling frustration? What does that look like in paint? Right? And allow it to be just more expressive and free form. And that's still a healthy form of expression.
When I started my podcast last fall, I started with the 5 senses because that is a somatic experience that helps you take everything onto the page. And so anything to do with your senses, who doesn't know their senses? Everybody does, I mean, that you don't have to pay anybody to do that kind of journaling. If you just need to get in your body, focusing on one thing that you see or you hear or you smell or you taste.
Yeah.
Just going into the 5 senses is the most basic place to start. And that's why when I had my podcast start last year, that's where I started engaging people with, how do I bring this joy to the journaling process if I don't even know where to start?
Right.
It's all part of those senses.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how that leads into the somatic piece of it, right? Just being in the body. And what I recommend for my clients when we're having a hard time connecting with our body, you could even journal about the different body parts, right?
Yes.
How do I feel in my feet? How do I feel in my legs? How do I feel in my stomach? How do I feel in my heart? And each part of you has a different consciousness, will have a different personality or a different message to share. And you can even ask, I feel a
Yes.
lump in my throat. What does that lump want to say to me? Right?
Yes.
And listen to your body. I didn't realize before talking to you that journaling was somatic. So I'm really excited now because the body is so intelligent, and the brain is often the last to know that the body will sense and feel things before the brain is aware of them. And so the more you can practice getting into the heart, especially, it's almost like future telling, right? You'll be able to tap into things earlier, get ahead of things, or not feel blindsided by things that have been bubbling up here and then finally hit the brain and you're like, oh crap, now I gotta go deal with that.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
When I did my self-love challenge, I did a 14-day self-love challenge on my journaling podcast, and it was all about listening to different parts of your body and different emotions, even. What are you feeling? What is that trying to tell you? You have a headache or you have a pain in your whatever. We went through different things, and the responses I got from people were amazing. I just got these incredible DMs saying, wow, I never thought about journaling that way.
Yeah.
Why not? It's a life-serving tool. Use it.
Right. Yes. There are no limitations. There are no rules. Beautiful.
Exactly.
Beautiful. I think you mentioned somaticwriting.com just as a resource if anybody's really looking to dig more into the somatic piece of that. That's something I will certainly be looking up. I had not heard of before, so I'm excited about that. And then the last piece we sort of briefly touched on earlier was sort of how the journaling can help you tap into the subconscious brain.
So when I was learning how to be a teacher, I was doing research. I think that it was divinely timed, but I tapped into research for literacy. The internet leads us interesting places, but the Center for Journal Therapy. And a lot of their research and a lot of their practices and teachings, these are for heavy duty journal therapists, will use the tool of a brain dump. Other people call it different things. Gabrielle Bernstein calls it rage on the page. It might not be rage that day. It might be sadness. But when you start your day and you offer up rawly whatever you are feeling authentically as you woke up that day onto the page, as a form of surrender and as a form of prayer. I'm feeling this way. Is this something that I need to leave behind? Or is this something I want to embrace? Because we don't need to believe the thoughts that are going through our head all the time. We wake up on different frequencies every day. But an early morning journaling practice where you're releasing those things onto the page will help you to receive the love that you need to witness what you write down. And that helps you to get on a better playing field for the rest of the day. And then at the end of the day, a great time to journal where you can receive also information about how your day was. If you sit down in gratitude for how your day went and see what comes on the page, and then you can witness your growth. Your journal can serve as a growth tool to help you understand the love that flowed through your day that you have a witness to on the page.
Yeah.
As long as you're not judging what comes out and you're receiving the information with love, I mean, why wouldn't you want to open up your journal and receive that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All too often the brain gets in the way, right? The
Mhm.
brain wants, and we love our brain. It's it's been here to help us stay safe, and it's done an excellent job of that. But the overthinking can get in
Yeah.
the way. And when we maybe listen to the heart for a moment and just let that, I think you use the term free flow, right?
Yes.
Oftentimes I will journal and look back and read it and think, wow, I didn't realize I thought that, or I didn't realize I felt that, or I didn't even realize I wrote that.
Right.
Right. And so when we open up to the intelligence of the body and let the brain just relax, right? It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be a thing. Then you'll find that you're going to see things or recognize things that were hiding in your blind spot. And that's
If
hard to do.
it really is. And, one of my writing mentors is Julia Cameron, and her process of what she calls quote unquote morning pages is what I've been doing, but not calling it that since I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And she influences people to write bestsellers and create world class art and things like that. You can call it whatever you want it, but just letting it show up and taking the time with those morning pages in our journal
Yeah.
can really help you connect to your heart from the start of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you also mentioned evening before bed, which is sort of my preferred time with kids. Mornings can be hard.
Yes.
Evening emptying out for me is very helpful for sleep.
In a prompted journal, like taking a journal break during the day, that's usually the time of day where a prompt will come in very handy, because usually if you start your day right, sometimes it can go off course and you need to center back in. I can't even tell you how many places to find free prompts out there in the world. You
Yeah.
just look, it'll show up. You could go on your lunch and write for 5 minutes and do a mini brain dump, a mini process, look back, and just set your course back right to finish the day. The process that I have in my course and that I've learned through Write for Life, I call it Journal for Life,
Mm-hmm.
with my tools, is that sometimes that little distraction, that little prompt will actually help you to get more focused for the rest of your day. So
Yeah.
little writing spurts from the morning, a little break in the day, and then at night, if you want to develop a habit, and if that's a serving habit for you, continue it. It doesn't work for everybody,
Right.
but it's one more self-care practice that does work for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said earlier, with that cup that's filling up with water and overflows, that's how we empty the cup, is self-care. And journaling is one of those. And
Yes.
yeah, beautiful. I'm so thankful and grateful to have you here and to share all this with us. I know you've got a lot coming up. So again, we'll sort of repeat that the Ignite Your Faith is coming out, book is coming out in June, and then the course is launching July 17th. I will definitely make sure all of your links are below. Where else can people find you if they want to get in touch before June and July?
I am on Instagram now and then. I'm stepping more bravely onto Instagram. Um, that's where my social media is. I also have a Facebook group, a private group that is called Joyful Journaling with Becca Ray. And we have about 100 members. We're quiet people, we journal. But that's my community where you can get more support for a journaling practice outside of my podcast right now, which is where I'm freely giving journal love tips every week.
Perfect. And what is your podcast name?
Joyful Journaling with Becca Ray, the
Okay.
Joyful Journaling podcast.
Got it. And is that the same on Instagram as well?
My Instagram is actually, good question, Your Writing Doula 2, the number 2 day.
Okay.
So I serve as a writing doula in all spaces, including my podcast.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. It's such a privilege and honor to spend time with you. And I look forward to seeing all of the things that you're producing soon.
Thank you for having me on, and it's an honor to be in your space.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Take care, my friends. We will talk to you and see you soon on the next episode. Take care.